Are the Phillies now the clear favorite in the National League East? And the answer has to be yes. They've already been doing it throughout this season. I know if you want to be a hater, you want to poke holes in the Phillies, you can talk about their schedule. I'm not going to do that. Okay, when you have a team that's consistently winning series after series after series, didn't your Rockies actually snap like the first time they'd actually lost the series in like a month? Isn't that what just happened over the weekend here?
It was, I think it might have only been the second series that the Phillies had lost, which was to the Reds at that point. But yeah, Rockies take 2 of 3. They should have won on Saturday night. They had the lead going into the ninth. They gave up 5 runs in the top of the ninth, and this is their fourth time that they've given up 5 runs or more in the ninth inning or later. They're the only team in baseball that have done that, and they've done it 4 times, which now ties a modern era record. So if they do it one more time, no bullpen has ever done that before.
Wow.
That's besides the point. Phillies ended up coming back. And in fact, if it wasn't a short leash by number 120, if you know, number 120, ejecting Bryce Harper in the first
Yeah.
inning of that game on Friday, that was incredibly close. I think the Phillies only lost by 1 run. You could have had a regular 2 out of 3 series win for the Phillies were it not for the ejection by home plate umpire Brian Walsh because of, a 3-letter word, not a 4-letter word, a 3-letter word, you. Can't say that to umps.
It's so ridiculous. I got a question, Patrick. I know you do some umping as well. Does that make your blood boil? Has there ever been like a coach that has said you to you and you have the quick hook and you throw him out?
No, not exactly. I give a little leeway where, we can have that conversation, like Bryce Harper said, with John Tumpane, Alan Porter, Vic Carapazzo, like running down the list of umpires who understand that you can have a little bit of a conversation and it's okay. But I guess 120 doesn't understand that. That was some shade. I thought that was really something by Harper there.
That's bad. Yeah, no, I mean, there was a bad ejection, and yeah, Harper, he handled that as far as a post game presser as good as you could. I think where we're clearly calling the guy out, but maybe not doing anything that'll get him fined or anything like that. I think that was a whole crazy situation. But looking at that Phillies team right now, I mean, man, even without Trey Turner, their lineup looks better than the Braves currently. And you're going to get Trey Turner back, and you have the best rotation potentially in baseball. I think it's pretty interesting that these two teams are now going to flip roles, basically. The last time we saw the Braves in an underdog role, it was 2021, and it's just simply because they didn't get off to the best start. The Mets were actually the team in first place, and it was really just a division that was wide open, and the Braves grabbed it, and they went on that run. This is a Braves team that's vulnerable, but who knows? Maybe being in an underdog role is something that will suit them more. And who knows? Maybe they'll, even if they don't win the division, maybe they'll find more postseason success this way.
Yeah, if you match up the injured players for the Phillies and Atlanta, as you said, Trey Turner on the IL, he should be back at some point. I think he was ramping up his running to 90%. But one thing manager Rob Thompson said before Friday's game was like, basically we're not rushing him back. We don't necessarily need him back at this point. So with the strained hamstring, obviously it's a long season, so they're going to take their time. But you got Ronald Acuna Jr. and Spencer Strider both done for the year for Atlanta. And Philly, right now, just as a 15-day IL stint, they've got
Yeah.
Trey Turner and then Dylan Covey, Luis F. Ortiz,
Yeah.
Junior Marte. Can I sell you a Junior Marte? I don't know what combination of Trey Turner and a random Phillies reliever you can combine, but it does not match Acuna Jr. and Spencer Strider. It doesn't match that loss. And so Philly's staying healthy as probably the biggest key for them, particularly that rotation. And it's been really good. Best rotation in the National League East. I think best rotation really in baseball so far, and I think that's going to continue. They still got some guys that they can go to down in the minors should they need some spot starts. So the Phillies definitely have of a lot of good mojo, and that was a good clubhouse. That was interesting going in there post game and seeing everyone sitting around eating, and they know the job that they got to get done because they've got it taken away from them the last couple years in the postseason, and they really believe that the regular season is their time to shine and say, you know what, we're gonna build up a lead, we're gonna build up a confidence, we're gonna build up this dominance so that when we get to the postseason, it immediately translates over so that we can go to that World Series. But It's almost as if every series now during the regular season is a smaller version of the World Series for them, so they can sort of callous themselves and harden the skin, if you will, to being good in those big spots and just winning at will.
They're going to have a chance here to prove that Brian Snicker is wrong about the whole, how it's the start of the playoffs being a disadvantage. Because I think at this point, I'd be very surprised if they don't end up being the winner of the National League East and getting that first round bye. And it'll be interesting to see if those two teams get to meet up again in the NLDS and what happens this time. One of the interesting parts when you talked about Acuna and Strider being out that struck me also. I mean, I don't know if they were the betting favorites for Cy Young and MVP, but they certainly were close to it at the beginning of this season. And it's almost another sort of feather in their cap as far as the fact of how good the Braves are, that we're not talking about them being done. We're talking about them not winning the division, but we still believe the Braves can win the World Series this year. And they lost their ace, a Cy Young candidate, and the reigning MVP, and they still have enough talent to win it all this year. That shows how good they are. Is it a lot harder? Has the margin of error gotten a lot smaller? Absolutely. But I'll tell you what, it really just shows how unbelievably stacked they are, that they still have Chris Sale, Max Fried. They got some answers there. They still have MVP type players, Matt Olson, Austin Riley, guys that can step up and elevate their game. Yeah, it's an embarrassment of riches that you're able to endure this, and actually it's not a lost season. Because I'd say 9 times out of 10, that team is done for the year. If you lose your best pitcher and your best hitter, like, come on, it's a wrap.
Yeah, you have to think that about 20 teams in baseball, if not more. Be curious to kind of crunch those numbers. That if they lost their two best players, right? Whether it was your best hitter and best pitcher, or you just pick your best two, you take those guys off the roster, and are you going to make the postseason, right? Or does that seriously diminish? We also know that there's probably 5 or 6 teams before the season started that really didn't have a shot to begin with. So that being said, those teams that are kind of in the middle, you can point at yourself too if you want.
I'm like, I didn't get it on camera,
Mets.
but yeah.
Also Mets. But yeah, you take those guys off, and you're like, we're kind of done, or man, maybe we could sneak in with the final wild card, but Atlanta's going to be okay. I mean, they have the 3rd best record in the National League, right? They got the top wild card, 10 games above 500, so they got themselves a nice cushion. And again, yeah, they're going to be okay. They're just not going to be wonderful like if they would have Ronald Acuna Jr. or Spencer Strider.
It's I'm now even thinking like it's partly due to the equity that the Braves have built. But if I told you Zach Wheeler and Bryce Harper go down tomorrow, how do we view the Phillies? Will we view them still like top tier team? I mean, I'd say definitely still a playoff team, but I think we would look at I think their World Series odds would take a bigger hit than the Braves have probably taken, like in Vegas right now with those two guys going out, just because it's the Braves and they just find their way every year to the playoffs. And I still wouldn't completely count them out of this division either. Like we're saying the Phillies are the favorites, but the Braves still could turn it on. I'm not saying for sure it's a slam dunk case that the Phillies are absolutely going to win this division. I just think it's clearly what we'd expect at this point.
And as you said, the Phillies have had an easier route. Like, again, you can only beat who's in front of you, but how much can that, twist things just a little bit, where the Phillies are now playing more teams above 500. Atlanta has yet to play the Rockies. So there you go. Right there. You got 6 games against them. I imagine the Marlins too. There's a lot of games left with them, maybe more so than with the Phillies. So anything can happen. It's just the odds of Atlanta making up that gap and possibly coming back in the NL East to make up for the 6-game difference is probably, really small, but never say never.
Never say never. And honestly, too, the Phillies, they might have a bigger thing to play for. They're on pace when it comes to just having like one of the best seasons ever. So if they are on that track and they keep maintaining that, it could get to the point where the Braves aren't even looking at the Phillies at some point this season. It's just, let's keep our guys healthy. Let's make sure we hold on to our wild card spot, and then we'll see a new season start in October, which could be a lot of fun. Will be a lot of fun.